Matthew, you join me from a swelteringly warm Brighton Beach, and a windy Brighton Beach for that matter. If you look behind me here, you can see it's extremely busy. In fact, it's hard to believe on the hottest day of the year that we are still in lockdown. But of course, that big date for your quarantine diary is the 4th of July, when in England, hairdressers, pubs, restaurants and hotels will reopen. Today, the government issued their advice for those businesses reopening. But just what will lockdown life look like for people?
England is unlocking. Hibernation apparently almost at an end. Businesses this summer desperate to shake off the longest of winters as the high street emerges, blinking into a bright new world. For some, July 4th marks their very own independence from lockdown. But for the Prince Albert in Brighton, easing social distancing's a tale of two halves. Home to a pub downstairs and a music venue upstairs. The regulars at the pub will soon be back, but returning to a very different night out. The hospitality industry has learnt today of a range of changes the government wants, which could make it harder to make money. The owners will have to keep a record of all customers for 21 days, so they can be traced if there's a case of coronavirus. Bring in contactless ordering with an app, so no more bar or counter service. Turn down the music so customers don't have to shout, which could help the spread of the virus. There may be screens between tables and at tills to separate staff from customers. In a heated Prime Minister's questions, Labour said the easing of the lockdown depended on an effective system to track and trace new cases. But Sir Keir Starmer said of 33,000 people with the virus in England, just 10,000 had been contacted.
If 2/3 of those with COVID-19 are not being contacted, that is a big problem. Because if we don't get track, trace and isolate properly running, we can't open the economy, we can't prevent infection disease spreading.
What NHS Test and Trace is doing is contacting the vast majority of those who test positive and their own contacts and getting them to self-isolate. And it is a formidable achievement.
Meanwhile, back at the Prince Albert, upstairs past the gig posters that never were. Home to one of the city's many live music venues, none of which are allowed to reopen.
Was it a bit weird this morning walking into this beautiful, but let's be honest, very dead venue?
Absolutely, it's like the Mary Celeste, to be honest. It's quite something. So 20 years here in a band every night. You know, it's quite heartbreaking, really.
With all live performances banned for now, hundreds of venues across the UK could be at risk of going under.
How worried are you about the live music scene in Britain?
Well, it will bring it to a grinding halt. It really will. All the famous bands, every band starts in a grassroots music venue. They do. You know, sort of the Beatles, the Stones, you know, the Clash, the Pistols. You know, everybody's come up from a small venue. And without that, how is anybody going to create anything as magical as that, really?
To save themselves and the future of live music, more than 500 gig destinations are asking for the government's help.
They need to sort this out. The industry brings in £5 billion, you know, and we're asking for 1% of that. It's not as if it's an annual thing, it's a one-off, you know, one-off payment which would keep us all afloat.
For some businesses like Katie's facial salon, they had everything ready to open on the 4th of July. The PPE on standby. They even had taken over 100 bookings.
I did feel quite disheartened because we had done a lot of preparation. My whole team was so excited about coming back. We only have a couple of clients at one time, so it's very, very easy to monitor. So I just felt quite surprised and shocked, actually, that pubs are allowed to open, and for me, that's like a lot more free movement. People aren't being checked on entry like they would be here. And I can't really see how we differ from hairdressers.
While some businesses may be feeling left out, what will this brave new world look like?
So to be clear, in just under 2 weeks' time, you can get your hair cut, but you absolutely cannot get your eyebrows done. You can go to the pub and have a couple of pints, but you must not go and work those off in the gym. On to socialising. Members of 2 different households can meet up indoors, but hold on a second, absolutely no hugging. You'll have to maintain 2 metres distance where possible and 1 metres plus if not. But the question is that clear?
No, not at all. It's all very ambiguous.
Have you been waiting for your cues from the government, or have you been kind of making up as you go along?
I think myself and all the people that I've been talking to, we've been just being sensible ourselves. It's all a bit up in the air, really.
And you'll be able to get your moustache done at the barbers on the 4th of July. Are you feeling excited about this prospect?
I wouldn't trust anyone else with my moustache apart from myself, to be honest with you.
When life returns and the bands finally come back to the stage, there will be dancing. But for now, the mics stay silent.
Well, let's look now at how those detailed guidelines on keeping customers safe can be implemented. Our North of England correspondent Clare Fallon is in Troutbeck near Windermere in the Lake District. Claire.
It is a beautiful and tranquil evening here in the Lake District. Just let me pause so as you can hear. Birdsong, that's it. But come July the 4th, I think it's going to be a bit less tranquil, based upon what we saw just down about 10 minutes down the hill earlier today in Ambleside. Busy roads, carloads of people arriving, floating things on the water, paddle boards, inflatables, even a game of cricket we saw in a pretty busy car park at one point. People are clearly really anticipating this bit of extra freedom they're going to get come the 4th of July. And for a lot of people, it's going to be a pub, a beer garden, where they want to taste that freedom for the first time. Out in a beer garden, it is not so difficult to stick to the guidelines and rules. You can see they've got the tables spaced out there so people can maintain social distancing, because social distancing has not gone away. And ahead of me, the toilets. Social distancing will apply in toilets. And that's going to be difficult. It may have to be one in, one out of the toilets in some places. And, you know, in a pub, you do drink, so therefore you need to... Let me bring you through here and introduce you to Kate.
I think we've got a problem with the sound there. We couldn't keep up quite with Claire's walking. We'll try it. We might have it back now, Claire.
Incredibly excited, slightly apprehensive. You know, it's going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to be really quiet and we won't make any money and we'll fail, or it's going to be hellishly busy and we're going to be, you know, struggling, but we're going to be delighted at that. And I can't wait to see our customers again.
I bet you can. You've spent today trawling through these guidelines that have been published. What bit's in there, and I'm touching surfaces and I can't help it, that's a problem.
So am I.
What other bits are you worried about?
Well, I've noticed that you have to take names and addresses of all your patrons, and that might present significant problems. And
literally
also,
everyone coming in and having a pint, you're required to take their details.
It seems so. It seems so. It's not so much of a problem, obviously, with the hotel guests. But obviously, if people just want to come in for a drink, we're going to have to provide them with pencils and pens, or they're going to have some apps, and we're going to have to make sure everybody's got the phone apps. I think signage is probably the way forward. Lots of signage. And also the expectation that everybody's going to be so grateful to be out, and they're going to want to do the right thing.
But can people socially distance when they've got a couple of pints in them?
I think so. I think people will be sensible, and I hope they will, because if it's laid on the bartenders and the waitresses and everything, that's a bit mean. I think everybody's going to be a bit cute about it. You know, social media and whatnot. It seems to say to me that everybody will be watching out for each other and everything, even under those circumstances of a lots of drink.